The police station was loud that afternoon. Phones rang nonstop, officers moved quickly between desks, and the low hum of conversation filled the room. It was just another busy day, the kind where everyone seemed in a hurry. Near the front desk stood a quiet older man. He wasn't dressed like a police officer. No uniform, no badge on display. Just a dark jacket, calm eyes, and the kind of posture that seemed almost too composed for a crowded station. Most people barely noticed him, except the rookie cop behind the desk. Fresh out of the academy, eager to prove himself, the rookie leaned back in his chair and looked the older man up and down. Then he smirked. "You're telling me," he said loudly enough for half the room to hear, "that you're here to give advice on security procedures." A few officers nearby looked over. The rookie chuckled and shook his head. "Sir, with all due respect," he continued, "this isn't a movie set. We deal with real situations here." A couple of officers laughed quietly. The older man didn't react. He simply stood there, hands loosely folded in front of him, as if the noise and the comments around him didn't matter at all. That only made the rookie laugh harder. "Let me guess," he added with a grin. "You watched a few action movies and thought you could walk into a police station and teach us something." More laughter followed. But across the room, one of the older detectives stopped typing. He glanced up. Something about the quiet man caught his attention. It wasn't the clothes. It wasn't the silence. It was the way he stood, perfectly balanced, relaxed, but alert. The detective narrowed his eyes. He had seen that posture before, but not in civilians. Meanwhile, the rookie leaned forward across the desk. "So tell me," he said sarcastically, "what exactly qualifies you to lecture police officers?" For the first time, the quiet man spoke. His voice was calm, steady. "I'm not here to lecture anyone," he said. "I'm just here because I was asked to be." The rookie rolled his eyes. "Yeah, and who exactly asked you?" Before the man could answer, the front doors of the station suddenly opened. Heavy footsteps echoed across the floor. Conversation around the room slowed, then stopped, because walking through the door was the police chief. He took 2 steps inside the station, and then he saw the man standing at the front desk. The chief froze. His expression changed instantly. And in that moment, the laughter in the room disappeared. The rookie noticed the silence and turned around, confused. He had no idea that the man he had just mocked was someone the chief knew very well. But in the next few seconds, the entire station was about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Before we continue, have you ever seen someone judged too quickly just because they were quiet? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The police station had gone strangely quiet. Just moments earlier, laughter had filled the room. Officers were joking, typing reports, answering calls, moving from desk to desk like any normal afternoon. But now something had shifted. The police chief stood near the entrance, his eyes fixed on the man at the front desk. For a brief second, no one spoke. The rookie cop noticed the sudden silence and turned in his chair. At first, he thought maybe something serious had happened outside. But when he followed the direction of everyone's gaze, he saw the chief staring directly at the quiet older man he had just been mocking. The rookie frowned slightly. He didn't understand why. To him, the man still looked ordinary. No badge, no uniform, no reason for the chief of police to suddenly stop in his tracks. The chief slowly walked forward. Each step seemed heavier than the last. Officers nearby straightened up as he passed. A few exchanged confused glances. Even the older detective who'd been watching earlier leaned back in his chair, curious about what would happen next. The rookie cleared his throat and tried to regain his confident tone. "Chief," he said with a small grin, gesturing toward the man at the desk. "This gentleman here says he's here to talk about our security procedures." A couple of officers shifted uncomfortably. The rookie continued, unaware of the tension building around him. "I was just explaining that we handle things a little differently in the real world." He chuckled softly, expecting the chief to join in. But the chief didn't laugh. Instead, he stopped a few feet away from the quiet man. For a moment, he simply looked at him. Then something unexpected happened. The chief's posture changed. The same man who commanded an entire police department suddenly stood a little straighter, almost like a soldier recognizing someone important. "Sir," the chief said quietly. The single word echoed across the room. Several officers blinked in confusion. The rookie's smile faded. The quiet man nodded politely. "Chief," he replied calmly. The rookie felt a strange knot form in his stomach. Something about the way the two men spoke to each other didn't feel normal. The chief turned slowly toward the rookie. "Officer," he said, his voice calm but serious. "What exactly is going on here?" The rookie shifted in his chair. "Well, he walked in saying he was here to help review our procedures," he explained. But I figured we should verify that first. He shrugged casually. You know how it is. Anyone can walk in and claim they're some kind of expert. No one laughed this time. The older detective watched carefully from across the room. He noticed the chief's jaw tighten slightly. Then the chief looked back at the quiet man again. Did he give you any trouble? The chief asked. The man shook his head. None at all, he said calmly. He's just doing his job. The answer seemed to surprise a few people. The rookie leaned back again, feeling slightly relieved. See, he thought. Nothing serious. But the older detective still wasn't convinced. He studied the quiet man more carefully now. The calm breathing. The relaxed shoulders. The way his eyes seemed to take in every detail of the room without moving much. That kind of awareness wasn't common. You usually saw it in people who had spent years in dangerous situations. Years learning how to stay calm when everyone else panicked. The detective leaned toward another officer nearby and whispered quietly, "Something's off." The other officer frowned. "What do you mean?" The detective nodded slightly toward the man at the desk. "Look at him," he said softly. "Really look." Across the room, the rookie tried to regain control of the situation. "So, Chief," he said, forcing a confident tone, "should we verify his credentials or—" He stopped mid-sentence, because the chief's expression had changed again. Not anger, not amusement, something closer to disbelief. The chief slowly turned back toward the quiet man. Then he said something that made several officers exchange nervous looks. "Officer," the chief said without taking his eyes off the man, "you might want to think very carefully about how you speak to him." The rookie blinked. "Why?" he asked. The chief didn't answer right away. Instead, he folded his arms and studied the young officer for a long moment. Around the room, the tension grew thicker. The older detective already had a strong suspicion about what was happening, but the rookie still didn't see it. To him, the quiet man was just another civilian. Just another visitor who had walked into the wrong place. What the rookie didn't realize was that within the next few minutes, the entire station was about to learn exactly who that quiet man really was. And when they did, the laughter from earlier would feel like the biggest mistake of his career. Before we continue, what would you do if you were in the rookie's position right now? Would you apologize or stand your ground? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The silence inside the police station grew heavier. Officers who had been working just minutes earlier were now pretending to stay busy, but their attention kept drifting back to the front desk. Something about the situation felt strange. The chief's tone had changed, and that alone was enough to make everyone uneasy. But the rookie cop didn't fully understand what was happening yet. He shifted in his chair and forced a small laugh, trying to bring the mood back to normal. "Chief, with respect," he said, "I'm just doing my job. Anyone walking in here claiming they're here to review police procedures should expect a few questions." The chief didn't respond right away. Instead, he watched the young officer carefully. The quiet man standing at the desk, Steven Seagal, remained completely calm. His hands were still loosely folded in front of him, and his expression hadn't changed at all. To anyone paying attention, it was obvious he wasn't bothered. But the rookie misread that calmness as arrogance. "So," the rookie continued, leaning forward slightly, "maybe we should start with something simple." He slid a notepad across the desk. "Name," the man answered calmly. "Steven." The rookie raised an eyebrow. "Steven what?" "Seagal." The name hung in the air for a moment. Across the room, the older detective's eyes widened slightly. He stopped typing. Something about that name felt familiar. Very familiar. But before he could think about it further, the rookie spoke again. "All right, Mr. Seagal," he said with a hint of sarcasm. "Let's try this again. What exactly qualifies you to walk into a police station and start advising officers?" Steven looked at him quietly. "I'm not here to advise anyone unless I'm asked," he replied. The rookie scoffed. "Right," he said, "because people with real experience usually come in quietly and stand around the front desk." A few officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. The older detective leaned back slowly in his chair. He had heard that name before, but he couldn't quite place it yet. Meanwhile, the rookie kept going. "You know," he said, tapping his pen against the desk, "people watch a few action movies and suddenly think they understand police work." He glanced around the room. Real life isn't Hollywood. Steven didn't react. His breathing stayed slow and steady, but the chief's patience was starting to wear thin. "Officer," the chief said calmly, "that's enough." The rookie looked surprised. "Chief, I'm just asking basic questions." The chief stepped closer now. "You've asked enough." But the rookie still didn't see the warning signs. Instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Well, if he's here for official business," the rookie said, gesturing toward Steven, Then he should have no problem explaining who invited him. He turned back to Steven. "So go ahead," he said with a confident grin. "Who exactly asked you to come here?" Steven looked at him for a moment. Then he spoke calmly. "The department did." The rookie laughed again. "The department," he repeated. "That's a little vague, don't you think?" Across the room, the older detective suddenly stood up. A memory had finally clicked into place. Years ago, he had attended a tactical training seminar hosted by a visiting instructor. The man had been quiet, disciplined, and incredibly precise with every lesson he gave. The detective remembered how the room had gone silent when the instructor demonstrated defensive techniques. Not flashy, not aggressive, just controlled, efficient. And his name. The detective felt a chill run down his spine. Steven Seagal. He looked back toward the front desk, studying the man more closely now. The posture, the calmness, the way he watched everything happening in the room without seeming to move his head. It was the same man. Before the detective could say anything, the rookie leaned forward again. "You know what I think," the young officer said smugly. "I think you walked in here expecting people to recognize you." He shrugged. "Sorry to disappoint you, but around here respect is earned." The room went completely silent again. The older detective closed his eyes for a brief moment, because the rookie had just made a very big mistake. The chief slowly turned his head toward the young officer. His expression had hardened. "Officer," the chief said quietly, "you might want to stop talking." But it was too late. The rookie crossed his arms. "Why?" he asked. "Is there something I'm missing?" The chief exhaled slowly. Then he looked directly at Steven. "Sir," he said respectfully, "I apologize for the misunderstanding." Several officers looked up in shock. The rookie's confident smile faded, because that was the moment he finally realized something was very, very wrong. He looked from the chief back to the quiet man at the desk. For the first time since the conversation began, uncertainty crept into his voice. "Chief, who exactly is this guy?" The chief didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned slowly toward the entire room. Every officer was watching now, and the truth they were about to hear would change the entire tone of the station. "But before we get to that moment, let me ask you something. If you were the rookie right now and realized you might have insulted the wrong person, what would you do? Would you apologize immediately? Or would you wait to see what happens next? Tell me your answer in the comments." The air inside the station felt heavier now. Every officer in the room had stopped pretending to work. Keyboards were quiet. Phones went unanswered for a moment. Conversations had faded into complete silence. All eyes were now on the front desk. The rookie cop sat frozen in his chair, the confidence he had carried only minutes earlier slowly draining from his face. He looked from the police chief back to the quiet man standing calmly in front of him. Steven Seagal hadn't moved. He still stood the same way he had since the beginning, balanced, relaxed, completely at ease, as if none of this tension mattered to him at all. But now the rookie was noticing things he hadn't noticed before. The way Steven's eyes calmly observed the entire room. The way he stood straight without looking stiff. The way his breathing remained slow and controlled despite the growing tension around him. It wasn't normal. Across the room, the older detective finally stepped forward. He walked slowly, carefully, as if confirming something in his mind. The chief noticed him approaching and nodded slightly. "You recognize him, don't you?" the chief asked quietly. The detective stopped a few feet away from Steven and studied him again. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he let out a small breath. "I thought I did," the detective said. The rookie looked between them, confused. "What are you talking about?" he asked. The detective glanced at the rookie and shook his head slightly. "A few years ago," he said slowly, "the department hosted a tactical training seminar." Some officers around the room nodded. They remembered. "It wasn't advertised publicly," the detective continued. "Only experienced officers were invited." He looked back at Steven. "And the instructor who ran it was one of the calmest men I've ever seen." The rookie frowned. "So what?" he said. The detective's voice became more serious. "He showed us how quickly a situation could change," he explained. "Not with strength, but with control." He paused for a moment. "3 of our strongest officers tried to overpower him during a demonstration." The rookie scoffed slightly. "And?" The detective's eyes stayed fixed on Steven. They were all on the ground in less than 10 seconds. The room grew even quieter. The rookie shifted uncomfortably. "Okay," he said, forcing a small laugh. "That still doesn't explain why everyone's acting like." He stopped when the detective turned toward him. "You remember the instructor's name?" the detective asked. The rookie shook his head. "No." The detective pointed gently toward the man standing at the desk. "It was him." The rookie stared at Steven. For a moment, he thought the detective must be joking, but no one in the room was laughing. Not the officers, not the chief, and definitely not the man standing quietly in front of him. The rookie swallowed. "So what?" he said slowly. He taught a class once. The chief finally spoke again. "No," he said calmly. "He trained more than a class?" The rookie looked at him. "What do you mean?" The chief folded his arms. "This man has trained tactical units across the country," he said, "including departments much larger than ours." A ripple of quiet whispers moved through the station. Several officers were now looking at Steven with completely different expressions. Not curiosity anymore. Respect. The rookie felt his stomach tighten. But pride still kept him from backing down completely. "So he's some kind of instructor," the rookie said. "That still doesn't mean he should walk in here and—" "Officer." The chief's voice cut through the room sharply. The rookie stopped speaking. The chief stepped closer to the desk. "You're focusing on the wrong part of this situation." The rookie blinked. "What do you mean?" The chief looked directly at him. "You're worried about whether he should be here." He paused. "You should be wondering why someone like him was invited." The rookie slowly turned back toward Steven. For the first time, uncertainty replaced his earlier confidence completely. "Who invited you?" he asked quietly. Steven's expression remained calm. "The department asked for a security review," he replied. The rookie frowned slightly. "But why you?" Steven didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced briefly toward the chief. The chief gave a small nod. That was when the older detective spoke again. "You really don't recognize him, do you?" he said. The rookie shook his head. The detective sighed. "A few years ago," he said, "there was a hostage situation downtown." Some officers in the room immediately remembered. It had been one of the most dangerous incidents the city had faced in years. A tactical team had to move fast. The detective continued. Lives were on the line. He looked back at Steven. The strategy they used that night came from a training program designed by him. The rookie's eyes widened slightly. "You're saying he—" "Yes," the chief said quietly. "He helped design the tactics that saved those hostages." The room was completely silent now. The rookie slowly leaned back in his chair. Everything he had said earlier replayed in his mind. The jokes, the sarcasm, the mocking tone, and suddenly none of it felt funny anymore. Across the desk, Steven remained calm. He hadn't corrected anyone, he hadn't defended himself. He had simply stood there and let the truth reveal itself. The rookie looked at him again, this time with completely different eyes. For the first time since the conversation began, he felt something he hadn't expected. Embarrassment. But the biggest moment hadn't happened yet, because the chief still hadn't said the one thing that would truly change how everyone in the station looked at the quiet man standing in front of them. And when he finally said it, the entire room would understand exactly how big a mistake the rookie had just made. "Before we continue, let me ask you something. Do you think the rookie should apologize now, or is it already too late? Tell me what you think in the comments." The silence inside the station felt almost uncomfortable now. Only minutes ago, the room had been filled with casual conversation and quiet laughter. But after everything that had been revealed, no one seemed sure what to say next. The rookie cop sat behind the desk, staring at the quiet man standing in front of him. Steven Seagal still looked exactly the same. Calm, composed, unbothered by everything that had just happened. But the rookie no longer saw an ordinary visitor standing there. Now he saw someone whose reputation had quietly filled the room with tension. Still, there was one question left unanswered, and everyone in the station knew it. The rookie cleared his throat. "Chief," he said carefully, "I understand he's helped with training before, but why is he here today?" The chief didn't answer right away. Instead, he slowly looked around the room. Several officers were watching closely now. Even those who had been working in the back offices had stepped closer, curious about what was unfolding. The chief finally turned back toward the rookie, because, he said calmly, this department asked him to come. The rookie blinked. "We did." The chief nodded. "Wes." He gestured toward the building around them. "Last month, the city council ordered a full review of our station security and tactical response procedures." The rookie remembered hearing something about that during a meeting, but he hadn't paid much attention at the time. "We wanted someone who understood real-world situations," the chief continued. "Someone who has trained officers in high-risk environments." He paused briefly. "Someone whose methods have already proven effective." The rookie slowly looked back at Steven. "So you called him?" "Yes," the chief said. The rookie rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. That would have been useful information earlier. A few officers nearby exchanged small smiles, but the tension hadn't fully disappeared. Because the chief wasn't finished speaking yet, He stepped closer to the desk and rested his hands on its edge. "Officer," he said, his tone firm but controlled, "you made an assumption today." The rookie nodded quietly. "Yes, sir. You assumed that because someone walked into this station quietly, he had nothing valuable to offer." The rookie swallowed. "I see that now." The chief glanced briefly toward Steven. "What you didn't realize," he continued, "is that some of the most experienced people you'll ever meet don't announce themselves." The rookie lowered his eyes slightly. Across the desk, Steven remained calm, watching the conversation without interrupting. The chief turned back toward the room. Many of the tactics our department uses today were influenced by his training programs. Several officers nodded slowly. They had suspected as much already, but hearing it confirmed out loud made it feel different, more real. The rookie shifted uncomfortably again. "So he's basically a consultant?" he asked. The chief gave a faint smile. "That's one way to describe it." But the chief's expression grew serious again. "There's something else you should know." The rookie looked up. "What's that?" The chief turned toward Steven with clear respect in his eyes. "Years ago," he said, "before I became chief, I attended one of his training courses. That caught the rookie's attention immediately." "You did?" The chief nodded. "Yes." He folded his arms as if remembering something from the past. "It was one of the most difficult courses I've ever taken." The rookie frowned. "What made it so difficult?" The chief glanced toward Steven again. "He didn't teach people how to fight harder," he explained. "He taught them how to stay calm when everyone else panicked." The room remained quiet. Anyone can react with force. The chief continued. "But controlling a situation without letting it spiral out of control, that takes discipline." The rookie slowly looked back toward Steven again. The calm posture, the steady breathing, the complete lack of defensiveness earlier. Now it all made sense. "You mean," the rookie said slowly, "that's why I didn't react when I—" "Yes," the chief said. The rookie felt his face grow warm, because he suddenly understood something important. Steven hadn't stayed quiet because he didn't know what to say. He had stayed quiet because he had nothing to prove. The chief stepped back slightly from the desk. "Officer," he said calmly, "experience doesn't always look the way you expect." The rookie nodded quietly. "Yes, sir." For a moment no one spoke again. Then the rookie finally looked directly at Steven. The earlier confidence in his voice was gone. "Replaced by something much more honest, sir," he said carefully. "I think I owe you an apology." Several officers watched closely now. This moment mattered. Steven studied the young officer for a moment. Then he gave a small nod. "There's no need for that," he said calmly. The rookie looked surprised. "But you were doing your job," Steven continued. "And asking questions is part of that." The rookie seemed relieved but still slightly embarrassed. "I should have asked them differently," he admitted. Steven gave a faint smile. "That's something every officer learns with time." The tension in the room began to fade again. But what had just happened had left an impression on everyone present. Because the quiet man they had barely noticed earlier had just taught the entire station something without raising his voice once. But the day's lesson wasn't over yet. Because what Steven was about to say next would make every officer in that room think about their job in a completely different way. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Do you respect the way Steven handled the situation? If you do, type Russ PT in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. The room remained quiet, but the tension now had a new shape. It wasn't fear or confusion anymore. It was something deeper. Respect, understanding. Something the rookie cop, along with everyone else in the station, hadn't expected to feel so quickly. Steven Seagal didn't move from his spot at the front desk. His calm presence seemed to pull the entire room into a strange equilibrium. The officers, who had been joking and laughing just an hour ago, now sat in a mix of awe and nervous attention. The rookie cop still fidgeted, unsure of what to do with the knowledge he now carried. The chief finally spoke again, breaking the silence with a tone that carried weight, authority, and experience. "Everyone here," the chief said slowly, "thinks power is measured by force, by who can shout the loudest, who can throw the hardest punch, or who can intimidate the most. But real strength," he paused, letting the words sink in, "comes from control, from knowing when to act and when not to." He looked directly at Steven. And this man, Steven's gaze met the chief's, steady, unflinching. No arrogance, no ego, just awareness. Has demonstrated that to every officer in this room today, without raising a hand. The rookie swallowed hard. His pride stung, but the lesson was clear. He had underestimated someone not because he lacked skill, but because he had failed to recognize quiet discipline. Steven finally spoke. His voice was low, controlled, and steady, yet it carried more authority than any shout could have. "I didn't come here to prove myself," he said. "I came here to observe, to understand, and to guide if needed. But guidance isn't about domination. It's about awareness, patience, and restraint. Something every officer should strive for." A few officers nodded quietly. Some whispered to each other, repeating the words as if trying to internalize them. The rookie's face burned with embarrassment. He realized that every sarcastic word he had spoken earlier had been unnecessary, not because Steven couldn't have retaliated, but because Steven had chosen not to. And in that choice, he had already proven far more than any confrontation ever could. The chief continued, turning slightly to address everyone in the room. "Let this be a reminder. There are two ways to handle situations like today: force, which solves nothing and often escalates problems, or restraint, which preserves dignity, safety, and control." Steven added, "Control isn't about holding someone down. It's about knowing yourself, your limits, and understanding the consequences of every action. The strongest man in the room isn't the one who wins every fight. It's the one who knows which battles are worth fighting." The officers absorbed the words, slowly realizing the magnitude of the lesson. Even the rookie, whose cheeks were still red from earlier humiliation, nodded. He couldn't deny it anymore. He had just been schooled by someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of discipline, calm, and precision. Steven glanced around the room, meeting eyes with individual officers. He didn't need to assert dominance. Every glance, every subtle movement, communicated confidence and awareness. The rookie cop finally spoke, his voice quieter this time. "Sir, I understand now. I shouldn't have." Steven interrupted him gently. "You asked questions. That's your job. Mistakes happen. What matters is learning from them. Control isn't about never failing. It's about how you respond when you do." The rookie exhaled slowly, relief mixed with newfound respect. He had thought today was about testing a stranger. He had been the one tested. Even the older detective, who had known Steven's reputation for years, leaned back in his chair, impressed by how effortlessly the lesson had been delivered. No one had to raise a hand. No one had to shout. And yet, the message was clearer than any training session he had attended in the past. The chief's gaze softened slightly as he looked at Steven. "I think our entire department just learned more in the past hour than in the last month of routine drills," he said. Steven nodded once calmly. "Discipline is a quiet thing. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't seek attention. But it always has an impact." Around the room, whispers grew. Officers exchanged looks, realizing the rookie was not the only one who had underestimated him. Every officer now understood something important: respect is earned not by proving power, but by showing restraint when it matters most. The rookie cop straightened up, finally finding his voice. "Sir," he said to Steven, "I just thank you for showing us." Steven gave a faint nod. "Remember this feeling. Control is easier to remember than a fight." The older detective whispered to the officer next to him. Most people never get to see lessons like this firsthand, and he was right. Today wasn't about heroics. It wasn't about violence. It was about showing a room full of trained law enforcement professionals that true authority comes from calm, awareness, and restraint. The rookie glanced at Steven one last time before lowering his eyes. He had learned something more valuable than any textbook or training video. Sometimes the strongest actions are the ones you don't take. Steven remained at the front desk, composed, a quiet anchor in a room full of officers now grappling with a new understanding of power. Before leaving, he gave a polite nod to the chief, acknowledging the silent cooperation and respect between them. The chief returned it without a word. Some lessons, he knew, didn't need words. They were understood in the pause, in the observation, in the calm. The room slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the atmosphere had shifted. The casual laughter of earlier hours would never sound the same again. Everyone knew now that the quiet man they had underestimated had left a permanent impression. And in that silence, a lesson echoed louder than any shout could. See, strength isn't shown through anger, intimidation, or chaos. Strength is measured in patience and control, and in the calm courage to act only when it truly matters. If this story of calm control and respect moved you, comment Discipline below and let me know where you're watching from. It's a lesson worth sharing. The station had returned to a semblance of routine, but nothing inside felt ordinary anymore. Officers moved with quiet awareness, each step measured, each glance carrying a bit more thought than before. The echo of what had happened at the front desk lingered, like a subtle vibration in the air, an invisible lesson no one could ignore. Steven Seagal remained near the front, composed, calm, and seemingly unaffected by the weight of the room. Yet, those who had witnessed the interaction knew better. Every officer present, from rookies to veterans, had felt the shift. Respect wasn't shouted, it had been earned silently, undeniably. The rookie cop lingered behind his desk, wrestling with a mix of embarrassment and awe. He had underestimated a quiet man, misjudged his presence, and almost let ego take precedence over judgment. But he had also learned something invaluable, something no manual, no video, and no lecture could teach. The chief stepped forward, his expression serious but satisfied. He turned slowly, addressing everyone present. Today, he began, we saw more than just an unexpected visitor. We saw a demonstration of something we often forget in this line of work: restraint, awareness, and discipline are more powerful than any display of force. He paused, letting the words sink in. Officers shifted in their seats, absorbing the truth. Many of you will face situations that test your patience, your judgment, and your control, the chief continued. Remember this moment. Remember the calm in the room, the measured actions of a man who didn't need to prove anything through violence or aggression. The rookie cop finally found his voice. "Chief," he said, his tone respectful. I understand now. I reacted poorly, but I've learned something that I'll never forget." The chief nodded. "Good. That's all any of us can do, learn and improve." Steven finally stepped forward, his voice low but commanding, carrying authority without aggression. Strength isn't measured by what you can break. Strength is measured by what you can hold back, by understanding the consequences of every action, by maintaining control even when provoked. You become unshakable. And that control doesn't just protect you, it protects those around you. The room was silent, every officer hanging on his words. No one dared interrupt. They knew this wasn't a lecture in the traditional sense. This was a demonstration, a live example of discipline and restraint, of power tempered by wisdom. Steven looked at the rookie cop, who lowered his eyes in acknowledgement. "You don't need to prove yourself," Steven continued. "People will test you, they will underestimate you. But your value isn't determined by how you react in anger. It's determined by how you choose to act when you have all the tools to dominate, and you don't use them." A collective realization spread through the room. Officers exchanged glances, some nodding slowly. They understood now why the chief had called him here. It wasn't just to review procedures, it was to remind them of something fundamental. True authority comes from self-control, not intimidation. The rookie finally spoke again, voice quiet but filled with sincerity. "Sir, I'm sorry. I misjudged you, and I see now that I still have much to learn." Steven's lips curved into a small, faint smile. "Mistakes aren't failures, they're lessons. What matters is whether you remember them." The older detective, who had watched the entire exchange unfold, whispered to a colleague, "Most people never get to witness a lesson like this firsthand. It's rare and powerful." Around the room, officers began returning to their duties, but the atmosphere had shifted. Louder, casual chatter and tension had been replaced by thoughtful observation and quiet respect. Everyone now recognized that actions didn't always have to be loud or forceful to carry weight. Before leaving, Steven turned once more to the entire room. His tone was calm but final. "The world will always test you. People will underestimate you, challenge you, and try to provoke you. But true strength isn't proven in those moments. It's proven in how you control yourself. That's what keeps people safe. That's what earns respect without needing to demand it." A few officers swallowed hard, clearly moved by his words. The rookie cop wiped his hands across his uniform nervously, feeling both humbled and inspired. He had thought today was about questioning a visitor. It had turned into a lifetime lesson on self, restraint, power, and respect. The chief watched the quiet man for a moment longer, then nodded slightly. "Thank you for reminding us what really matters," he said. Steven simply acknowledged the words with a subtle nod, then turned toward the door. Every officer followed his movements silently, understanding that the lesson wasn't over simply because he was leaving. The presence he had carried, the example he had set, it would linger in every action they took from now on. As Steven walked out, the rookie cop whispered under his breath, "I'll never forget this. Not ever." And that was the power of what had happened. No violence, no spectacle, just a demonstration of calm, control, and disciplined authority. Weeks later, officers would still talk about the day a quiet man named Steven Seagal came to the station. Not to boast, not to fight, but to show that the most impactful lessons are the ones taught through restraint. That true power doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to prove itself with force. It exists in control, patience, and the quiet confidence to act only when absolutely necessary. If you're reading this and thinking about your own life, whether at work, school, or in daily challenges, remember this lesson: respect, discipline, and control will always speak louder than anger, force, or fear. If this story inspired you, comment "so true" all below and share where you're watching from. Let's remind everyone that true strength isn't about the battles you win, it's about the ones you choose not to fight. because in the end, the quiet ones often leave the loudest mark.